The first thing I remember was the sound of rain hitting the windshield. It was late on a Thursday night, and I was driving home after a 12-hour shift at the construction site. I was tired, but I was thinking about one thing, my house. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't even particularly large. But I had spent 7 years paying for it, fixing it, painting it, and turning it into a place that finally felt like mine. Then headlights appeared in front of me. A truck crossed into my lane. I barely had time to react. The impact was violent. Metal twisted. Glass exploded around me. My chest slammed against the steering wheel, and everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I was staring at a white hospital ceiling. Ryan? I turned my head. Dr. Samuel Parker stood beside my bed. You're awake. My throat was painfully dry. What happened? You were in an accident. You've been unconscious for almost 2 days. I tried to sit up but immediately regretted it. Your ribs are fractured, and you've suffered a concussion, he continued. You're going to be here for a while. My first thought was my house. Someone needs to check on my place. Already done, a familiar voice said. I looked toward the door. Caleb Turner walked into the room. My best friend. For 15 years, Caleb had been the person I called whenever something went wrong. He had helped me move into my house, helped me renovate the kitchen, and even kept a spare key. He walked over and squeezed my shoulder. Don't worry about anything, he said. I've got you covered. I smiled. Thanks, man. That's what friends are for. He stayed for about 20 minutes before leaving. The next morning, my younger sister Olivia arrived. She sat beside my bed, holding a coffee she clearly hadn't touched. Ryan, I need to ask you something. What? Did you give Caleb permission to handle your finances? I frowned. Not exactly. Why? He told me you did. I laughed. Caleb probably just wanted to make sure the bills were paid. Olivia didn't laugh. He also said you gave him permission to deal with the house. That made me pause. What does deal with the house mean? I don't know. For the next 10 days, Caleb kept telling me everything was fine. He paid my bills. He collected my mail. He even sent me pictures of my dog, Max. Nothing seemed suspicious. Until the day I was finally discharged. Olivia drove me home. As we turned onto my street, I immediately noticed something strange. There was a black SUV parked in my driveway. Then I saw a new security camera above my front door. And the lock had been replaced. I stared at my house. What the hell? Olivia stopped the car. Before I could say anything else, the front door opened. A man I had never seen before stepped outside. He looked directly at me. Can I help you? I got out of the car. This is my house. The man frowned. No, sir. He pointed toward the driveway. You need to leave. The owner doesn't want you here. My heart started pounding. What owner? The man answered with one name. Caleb Turner. For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. I looked at the stranger standing in my doorway, then at Olivia. Did you just say Caleb Turner? The man nodded. He's the owner of the property now. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, but this time it had nothing to do with my broken ribs. That's impossible. The man stepped outside and closed the door behind him. I'm only doing what I was instructed to do. I walked toward him. Who are you? Derek Wallace. The name meant nothing to me. What are you doing in my house? Derek looked uncomfortable. I purchased the property. My stomach dropped. You purchased my house? Yes. When? About a week ago. I stared at him. I had been lying unconscious in a hospital bed a week ago. You're lying. Derek pulled out his phone. I have the documents. Olivia stepped between us. Ryan was hospitalized. He couldn't have sold anything. Derek hesitated. I don't know your medical situation. I was told everything was legitimate. Who told you? Caleb. I felt my hands shaking. Where is he? Derek looked away. He's supposed to meet me here tomorrow. I laughed bitterly. Of course he is. Olivia grabbed my arm. Let's go. No. I looked at my house. My house. The place where I had spent years building a life. I couldn't simply walk away. I called Caleb. He answered after 3 rings. Ryan. You're home. What did you do? Silence. Then he sighed. I was hoping you'd wait until tomorrow. Did you sell my house? You don't understand. Did you? Yes. The word hit harder than the accident. Why? You were in the hospital. You needed money. I had money. You think you did? I clenched my jaw. Caleb, I'm standing outside my own house while a stranger tells me I can't enter. I'll explain everything tomorrow. No. You explain it now. Another silence. Then Caleb said something that made my blood run cold. Ryan, check your email. He hung up. A minute later, my phone received a message. There was one attachment. A property transfer document. And at the bottom was my signature. I stared at it. It looked exactly like mine. But I knew one thing for certain. I had never signed it. I stared at the document on my phone until the words began to blur. My signature was at the bottom. My full name. Ryan Mitchell. Underneath it was the date. 7 days earlier. I remembered that day perfectly. I had been unconscious in a hospital bed. There was no possible way I had signed anything. Olivia, I said quietly, take a picture of this. She already had her phone out. I'm sending it to myself. I opened the document again and started reading every line. According to the paperwork, I had voluntarily transferred ownership of my house to Caleb for a fraction of its actual value. Then Caleb had apparently sold it to Derek Wallace. The entire transaction had supposedly happened within 48 hours. It made no sense. Who notarized this? Olivia asked. I scrolled down. There was a name. Martin Hale. A notary I had never heard of. Olivia looked at me. This is fraud. I know. Then we need a lawyer. She immediately called one of her friends who worked in finance. Within an hour, we were sitting in a small office with Lauren Hayes, a real estate attorney. She studied the documents without saying much. Finally, she looked up. Ryan, did you authorize Caleb to act on your behalf? No. Did you sign a power of attorney? No. Did you sign anything related to your house? Absolutely not. Lauren nodded. Then this transaction is extremely suspicious. She pointed to the date. This is when the transfer supposedly happened. Yes. Where were you? In the hospital. Can you prove it? I almost laughed. I was unconscious. Lauren's expression became serious. That's even better. She asked Olivia to get my hospital records. Then she examined the signature. I want a handwriting expert to analyze this. Do you think it's fake? I don't know yet. She turned the screen toward me. But there is something else. I leaned closer. What? The document says the transfer was witnessed in person. My stomach tightened. By whom? Lauren pointed at the bottom. Caleb Turner. I stared at his name. My best friend had supposedly watched me sign away my home while I was unconscious in a hospital. But Lauren wasn't finished. There's another problem. She opened a second file. The purchase price is listed as $75,000. My house was worth more than $300,000. Why would Derek pay that little? He wouldn't, Lauren said. Unless. She stopped. Unless what? Unless he believed there was something wrong with the property. I looked at Olivia. Then back at Lauren. What are you saying? Lauren leaned back. I think Caleb may have lied to Derek too. That possibility changed everything. Maybe Derek wasn't working with Caleb. Maybe he had been fooled. And if that was true, there was only one question left. Why did Caleb need my house so badly? The next morning, Lauren called me before I even had breakfast. I found something, she said. I sat up. What? The property transfer wasn't filed normally. What does that mean? It means someone rushed it through. She explained that the paperwork had been submitted using an expedited process. Someone had paid extra to make sure the ownership change appeared in the public records almost immediately. Who paid for it? That's what I'm trying to find out. Olivia was sitting across from me, listening. What about the signature? I asked. Still being examined. But I don't think that's our biggest problem. What is? There was a second document attached to the transfer. My stomach tightened. What document? A private agreement between Caleb and Derek. Lauren emailed it to me. I opened it. The agreement stated that Derek would purchase the house for $75,000 and then sell it back to Caleb for the same amount after a short period. I stared at the screen. So Derek never intended to keep the house. Apparently not. Then why? That's what we need to find out. I immediately thought of something. Can I go inside? Lauren hesitated. Legally, Derek is currently the registered owner. So no. Not without permission. I felt helpless. My own clothes were still inside. My father's old watch. Family photographs. Everything I owned. Then Olivia suddenly looked toward the window. Ryan. I followed her gaze. Across the street, an elderly man was standing beside his mailbox. George Bennett. My neighbor. He had lived there for almost 20 years and knew everyone on the street. I walked over to him. George, did you see anything while I was in the hospital? He stared at me for several seconds. I was wondering when you'd come back. What do you mean? George lowered his voice. Caleb came to your house the night after your accident. That doesn't surprise me. He wasn't alone. I froze. Who was with him? 2 men. Do you know them? No. George looked around before continuing. They carried boxes into your house. Boxes? Documents, I think. And one of them had a briefcase. My heart started beating faster. Did you see anything else? George nodded. Caleb changed the locks the next day. I already knew that. But then George said something I hadn't expected. He also brought someone else. Who? A woman. What woman? George frowned. I don't know her name. Can you describe her? He thought for a moment. Dark hair. Maybe in her 40s. She argued with Caleb in your driveway. What did they argue about? George looked directly into my eyes. She told him he was making a huge mistake. I felt a chill run through me. Did you hear anything else? George nodded slowly. One thing. What? He said, Ryan will never find out what happened to the money. I stared at him. What money? George shook his head. I don't know. But suddenly, the house wasn't the only thing I was worried about. There was money involved. And Caleb had been hiding something from me long before the accident. I couldn't stop thinking about George's words. Ryan will never find out what happened to the money. What money? I had no idea what he meant. The next morning, Lauren asked me to meet her at her office. She placed a folder on the desk. We found the bank account connected to the property transaction. And the $75,000 didn't go to you. I already knew that. Where did it go? She pushed a paper toward me. To an account belonging to a company called Northbridge Holdings. I frowned. I've never heard of it. Neither had I. Lauren paused. But there's something interesting. She showed me the company registration. The owner of Northbridge Holdings was listed as Caleb Turner. I leaned back in my chair. So he sold my house to Derek, but the money went to his own company? Correct. Then Derek isn't the real problem. No. Lauren folded her hands. Caleb is. My phone suddenly rang. The number wasn't saved. I answered. Hello. A woman's voice replied. Is this Ryan Mitchell? Yes. Who is this? My name is Emily Carter. The name felt strangely familiar. Do I know you? No. But I know Caleb. My eyes immediately went to Lauren. Why are you calling me? Because I heard what happened to your house. How? Someone sent me an article about the property dispute. There was a pause. I think you should know that Caleb has done this before. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? He takes advantage of people who trust him. Who are you? Someone who used to trust him too. I asked where we could meet. An hour later, Emily walked into a small cafe near Lauren's office. She looked nervous. I dated Caleb 3 years ago, she said. I stared at her. Why didn't you tell me? Because I knew you wouldn't believe me. What happened? Emily looked down at her coffee. He borrowed money from me. A lot of it. How much? Almost $40,000. I frowned. Did he pay you back? No. Then why didn't you take him to court? I tried. She reached into her bag and pulled out an old envelope. Inside were bank statements, messages, and copies of contracts. He convinced me to invest in a property company. I looked at the documents. Northbridge Holdings. The same company. Emily continued. He told me the company was legitimate. Then the money disappeared. I felt a cold sensation in my stomach. Where did it go? She looked directly at me. I don't know. Then she pushed another document across the table. This is the last thing I received from Caleb. I read it. It was a message dated 2 weeks before my accident. Don't worry. Ryan's house will solve everything. I looked up. Emily's face had gone pale. I think your house wasn't the target, Ryan. Then what was? She whispered the answer. Your name. And suddenly, everything Caleb had done started to look very different. For several seconds, I couldn't process what Emily had just said. My name? She nodded. Caleb wasn't interested only in your house. He needed someone with a clean financial history. I looked at Lauren. What does that mean? Lauren took the documents from Emily and studied them carefully. Ryan, how much do you know about Caleb's company? Almost nothing. He always told me he was doing property investments. Lauren shook her head. Northbridge Holdings has significant debts. How much? More than $2 million. My stomach dropped. $2 million. She nodded. Creditors have been demanding payment for months. I suddenly remembered Caleb's behavior during the weeks before my accident. The phone calls. The nervous conversations. The way he kept asking strange questions about my house. At the time, I hadn't thought anything of it. Now it all made sense. He used my property to cover his debts, I said. Possibly, Lauren replied. But there's something we still don't understand. What? Why create a fake sale instead of simply taking out a loan? Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Derek. I answered immediately. Ryan, we need to talk. About my house? Yes. What happened? I checked the paperwork more carefully. And? I was lied to. I looked at Lauren. By Caleb? Yes. Derek sounded furious. He told me the house belonged to him and that you had willingly transferred it. That was a lie. I know that now. What are you going to do? I want out of the deal. Lauren immediately shook her head. Tell him not to sign anything else, she whispered. I repeated it. Derek agreed to meet us. That afternoon, he came to Lauren's office carrying a thick folder. I want to help you, he said. Why? Because I don't want to be involved in fraud. He opened the folder. Inside were copies of emails between him and Caleb. One email immediately caught my attention. It was sent 3 days before my accident. Caleb had written. Once Ryan is hospitalized, everything will be easier. I stared at the sentence. My hands went cold. Why would he know I was going to be hospitalized? Nobody answered. Then Derek pulled out another document. This was attached to the email. It was a life insurance application. My name was on it. My signature was at the bottom. But I had never applied for it. Lauren's expression changed immediately. Ryan, this is much bigger than your house. I stared at my forged signature. Suddenly, the accident didn't feel like an accident anymore. I looked at Derek. Who else knew about my insurance? He hesitated. Caleb. I stood up. Then we need to find out exactly what happened that night. Because if Caleb had planned everything before my accident, I needed to know whether the crash that nearly killed me had really been a coincidence. The room went completely silent. I had spent 11 days believing the accident was simply terrible luck. Now I wasn't so sure. Lauren immediately called the police and gave them copies of the documents. She also contacted the insurance company to report the fraudulent application. But there was one problem. We had no proof Caleb had anything to do with the crash. Only suspicious documents. Only a timeline that looked impossible. Only a man who seemed to have planned everything around the moment I entered the hospital. Then George called me. Ryan, I remembered something. What? The night of your accident. My heart started pounding. What about it? I checked my security camera this morning. Why? Because I remembered seeing Caleb near your house that evening. I froze. Send me the footage. A few minutes later, a video appeared on my phone. The timestamp was clear. 10:43 p.m. I watched the screen. Caleb's car slowly passed my house. Then it stopped. He got out. He stood near my driveway for almost 5 minutes before getting back into his car. But that wasn't the strangest part. Another vehicle appeared behind him. A dark pickup truck. The same type of truck involved in my accident. I zoomed in. The license plate wasn't completely visible, but 3 numbers were clear. I immediately sent the footage to Lauren. She called back within minutes. Ryan, don't contact Caleb. Why? Because the police are checking the plate. 2 hours later, an officer called. The plate belonged to a truck registered to a company connected to Caleb. My hands went numb. Do you know who was driving it? Not yet, the officer said. Then Lauren received another message. A bank record. The night of the accident, Caleb had transferred $18,000 to an unknown account. The payment description said, "Job completed." That was enough for the police to issue a warrant. But Caleb had disappeared. His phone was off. His office was empty. And when investigators searched his apartment, they found something unexpected. A safe. Inside were documents, hard drives, and copies of my personal information. My passport details. My bank statements. My insurance information. And one handwritten note. Lauren read it aloud. "After Ryan is gone, the house becomes mine." I couldn't breathe. After I'm gone. Nobody spoke. For the first time, I realized what Caleb had actually planned. The house wasn't the final goal. My death was. But Caleb had made one mistake. He had assumed I would never survive the accident. And now I was alive. That evening, my phone rang. It was Caleb. I answered. His voice was shaking. "Ryan, listen to me. Where are you? I never wanted this to happen." "What happened, Caleb?" Silence. Then he whispered. "Meet me alone." I looked at Lauren. She immediately shook her head. But Caleb continued. "Come alone, Ryan. If you want to know who was really behind all of this." Then he hung up. And for the first time since the accident, I wasn't afraid of Caleb. I was afraid of the person Caleb was afraid of. I didn't go to Caleb alone. Lauren insisted that the police follow me, but we kept our presence hidden. Caleb had chosen an abandoned warehouse outside the city as the meeting place. When I entered, he was standing near a broken window. He looked nothing like the confident man I had known for 15 years. He looked exhausted. "You came," he said. "You said you'd tell me the truth." Caleb looked at the floor. "I never wanted you dead." I felt my jaw tighten. That's a strange thing to say after someone nearly kills me. I didn't cause the accident. Then who did? He took a deep breath. "Victor." I froze. "Derek?" "No. Victor Hale. The property investor. The man behind Northbridge Holdings," Caleb continued. "He was using my company to move money. Millions of dollars. When I tried to leave, he threatened me. And you chose me?" Caleb's eyes filled with tears. I was desperate. "So you forged my signature?" "Yes." "You stole my house?" "Yes." "You took out insurance in my name?" He nodded. "And you arranged the accident?" "No." He looked directly at me. "Victor did." Behind me, I heard footsteps. The police moved in. Caleb didn't resist. But before they arrested him, he handed Lauren a small flash drive. "Everything is on there." The drive contained years of financial records, messages, recordings, and transactions. It proved Caleb had committed fraud. But it also proved that Victor had been controlling him. Victor was arrested 2 weeks later. Derek's purchase of my house was cancelled, and the property was legally returned to me. Caleb was sentenced for fraud and forgery. The hardest part wasn't losing the house. It was realizing that the person I trusted most had been willing to sacrifice my life to save himself. Months later, I stood in my living room for the first time since the accident. The walls were exactly the same. The old wooden table was still there. My father's watch sat safely in a drawer. Olivia stood beside me. "You okay?" I looked around. Yeah. But I wasn't the same man anymore. I had learned something I wished I had understood years earlier. Trust isn't something someone earns once and keeps forever. It has to be earned again and again. A few weeks later, I received a letter from Caleb in prison. I almost threw it away. Instead, I opened it. There was only one sentence inside. I was jealous of your life because I thought you had everything. I folded the letter and put it away. Because the truth was simple. Caleb didn't steal my house because he hated me. He stole it because he wanted the life he thought I had. And in trying to take everything from me, he destroyed his own life instead. I survived the accident. I got my home back. And most importantly, I finally understood the difference between having a best friend and having someone who deserves that title.